Hi AP Computer Science students, welcome back to the video series. Today we're going to be talking about objects and object-oriented programming, which is what this course is really all about. So we already spoke in class a little bit about objects and what they are. So now we're going to get to some of the fun part. So here's the first question for you. You knew it was coming. What do all of these items, there's three sets of items coming up. What do all of these items have in common? So I've got a couple of cookie cutter type things here and some Play-Doh. That's one set of items. I've got a whole bunch of Matchbox type of little cars here and different varieties. Okay, here you go. And a Chitty Chitty Bang Bang car. And the third item is this, which, if you don't know what this is, right now it's a radio, but at one point in time it was also a little TV. So, what do all three of those things have in common? That's the first question. So, the answer is that they are all fantastic ways of representing what an object is in Java and what it means to be an object. So the first thing that we will kind of talk about are the cars. So let's look at each one of the cars and see what we think. We've got a little race car looking thing here. He's red and he's got 4 wheels. And he's got a fast engine, and he races. Then we've got two pretty regular looking cars here, a purple one and a red one. They both have 4 wheels. One of them has 2 doors, the other has 4 doors. But other than that, they're pretty standard looking cars. Then we've got this pretty cool orange car, which is really a truck because it's got a flatbed. And so it only has 2 doors and a flatbed. And then finally we've got this really cool Chitty Chitty Bang Bang car, which you can actually open the wings on and it can fly. Okay, so if we think about what these cars have in common, you're going to immediately start to think about how to define the vehicle class. And we talked about this in class already. In the course, not in class. So you can figure out that every single one of these vehicles has a minimum of 4 wheels in this particular case, a minimum of 2 doors, and then potentially other features. So if you look at the race car example, the state items that I had mentioned were wheels, an engine, the color, and the behavior that I mentioned was racing. In the Chitty Chitty Bang Bang car, the behavior was flying. So that was in addition to what the other cars can do. Okay, so again, if you think about the hierarchy, you have the class, and then each one of these cars would be the object. Okay. So another way to think about objects, and the reason I'm spending so much time on it is because they're pretty complicated. It's a pretty complicated thing, and it's very, very important for the study of Java, is that another way to think about objects is that an object, and I'm going to use the radio in this case as an example, an object has kind of 2 perspectives that you can think about it from. One is from the outside. So from the outside perspective, this radio has users of the object or of the clients who use the interface to manipulate it. So in this case, the user has a choice of these little buttons here, which used to change the channel when it was actually a working TV. And it has this little dial here, which changes the AM, FM stations, or it tunes to the right station. This little button over here, up or down, changes from AM to FM. And it has a plug for, for plugging into the wall, and it has a nifty little antenna that expands. Okay, so these are sort of the main ways, and there's an on-off switch as well up here. Okay, so these are the kind of the main ways that a user would interface with this object. The inside perspective has to do with the implementer, the person who actually makes this thing work and puts the pieces together. So if you think about that, that's basically the manufacturer, and they have to be concerned with the motherboard that's in this little device and how the radio stations and the TV stations get together into this device so that the user can actually make use of it. And so it's really the same thing with an object. This radio state attributes obviously has, at its very simple level, it has a case, and then it has the controls that we mentioned that allow the user to interface with it. And then the guts is the inside, is the implementation. So this radio, and the reason you know this is an object and why it's a good example, and most electronic devices that we have that we buy these days have the same kind of thing, is they have a little sticker on them usually. This one's probably long since gone. That says something like, this device should be serviced by certified professionals only. If you remove this panel, you'll avoid your warranty. If you open it or tinker with it, you'll avoid the warranty. So that's how you know that it's an object, because it's kind of all self-contained. It's really not meant for you to play with it. Okay? So, like I said, an object has state and it has behaviors. So the state of this radio is that it's a yellow case. It's pretty boxy. It has an antenna. It has knobs that do different things. But the behavior is, basically, okay, turning to one station or another, turning to one channel or another, picking up a signal. Those are the types of behaviors for this radio. Okay, so, if you want to think about it another way, what kind of questions could you ask of this object? So you could say, well, is it on or off? What station is it tuned to? What is the volume setting? So those are the state attributes, okay? And what it does is, it actually does something when those state attributes are changed, and that's the behavior. So that is the radio example, and I like that example a lot. Finally, the thing I want to mention is a class is something that can be thought of as almost a blueprint. So if you know anything about architecture, the way blueprints work, they kind of lay out how the object is going to be built, and that's exactly what a class does. It lays out and defines the attributes and operations or behaviors that the object is going to take on. So finally, it's time to talk about what the Play-Doh has to do with objects. And I'm going to have some Play-Doh for you to play with in class. But in the meantime, I will kind of ask you, Play-Doh doesn't seem to be the same sort of thing as the car example or the radio, because you don't think of Play-Doh as an object per se. But in this case, it will be. So think about for a moment what you think this can be, how this can relate to an object, and I'll tell you when we come back. Okay, so we're back. So what I want to propose to you is that in this case, the Play-Doh isn't by itself the object, but rather the memory in the computer. So we have different nuggets of memory or data that's stored inside the computer. And what we have is, in this case, I've got a little heart-shaped cookie cutter. And I have some others too. I have a duck and I have a little telephone. But basically, what this represents is this cookie cutter is the class or the blueprint for some object. Okay, so if I roll out my Play-Doh a little bit flat, and I make it usable for my example, I'm going to tilt the computer screen here a little bit so you can see what's going on. So I'm going to use my cookie cutter over here and punch that out. Okay, and then I'm going to take my same cookie cutter and I'm going to create another heart. And now you see that I have a purple heart and a blue heart. So what does that tell you? Well, I've already said that this is memory, and I've already said that this is the class known as a heart. Okay, so what these hearts are is they are instances of the class or of the blueprint. What is an instance of the class? An instance of the class is an object. Okay, so what is the state of this object? Well, it's the shape of a heart and it's the color blue. This one is the shape of a heart and the color purple. If I were to make another object, say the duck, okay, I'm not going to do it, but I could have a purple duck, and that would be a different class because the class is a duck, but it would be, the state would be a purple purple object, and in the shape of a duck, for example. Basically, you have your representative objects. Now, in this case, it may be kind of hard to think about what the behavior of this object is, but it could be something like it rolls, or it flips over. It's not really practical in this case, but that's kind of the idea of what the object is. So, and then finally, this is just a fun little fact, you take your Play-Doh and you kind of smush it all back up together, and you've basically cleared your object from memory. And what that's called in Java is it's called automatic garbage collection. In a lot of other languages, you actually have to take care of disposing of your objects when you're done using them, but in Java, it takes care of that for you. So we'll put these back into the Play-Doh containers so that my daughter can continue to use them. And that is the lesson for today. So I hope that all of these examples really help clarify for you what an object is, and you learn about instances of an object and classes and blueprints and the different states and behaviors. So we'll continue talking more in class. Have a good night.